Well, good evening and welcome, everyone. We're excited and blessed this evening to invite Commissioner Stephanie Hoffman into our presence for our March Thoughtful Thursday. Commissioner Hoffman has spent her career fighting for historically underrepresented and underserved communities, working at the intersections of race, economic justice, gender identity, disability, and more. With deep experiences in organizations such as Housing Resources, Open Doors Kalamazoo, and YWCA's
Scientists
Domestic
people
Assault
take a
Center.
peek and find it teeming with more life than they'd ever imagined.
Turn
She
your head
brings
and
firsthand knowledge of the
at first, companies
systemic.
were unhappy to suddenly share the name of the evil company from.
She brings firsthand knowledge of the systemic barriers people face and the real solutions that can create lasting change. As founder and CEO of Evolution Housing Advocacy and Services, and a leader in anti-racism and pay equity efforts, she continues to push for policies that dismantle injustice and uplift our shared humanity. A warm and grateful welcome, Commissioner Hoffman. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Darby and Miriam, for such a warm welcome. I am not one that is comfortable with hearing things like that because I'm like, I just do what I do. So thank you for doing that. And when I hear things like that, I'm always like, are they talking about me? Like what? It's always very out of body experience for me. And so I appreciate and I'm honored to be here with you all today. I count it a privilege and I count it an honor to be able to be one of the voices within our community to bring perspective and a different way of viewing things that are happening locally and on the state and local level, on federal level, excuse me. So I am so happy to be here. And thank you again for such a warm welcome.
Our pleasure. So the first part of tonight's program will be pretty much an interview format. And then the last 30 minutes or so, participants will have a chance to engage in Q&A. And we prefer live questions versus over chat. All right. So my first question is, what is that piece, Stephanie, if I may call you Stephanie, Commissioner Hoffman, what is that piece, Commissioner Hoffman, in your story that inspires and motivates you on this mission of housing for all?
Okay, let's get something straight right now, Darby. I'm Commissioner Hoffman on the first and third Mondays of the month. Whenever you see me at the grocery store, whenever you see me, look, at the bar, I'm Steph. So I want everybody to know that, okay?
Okay.
But it's interesting you asked me that question. Um, I grew up in Muskegon Heights, Michigan. And I grew up in a very large family. My mother was the oldest daughter of 14 children. And so my family, with my mom being the oldest daughter out of 14, my uncles and my aunts and their children always lived with us at some point in time. My mama was a single mother. I have two brothers. I'm a middle girl. And long story short, I made the decision without consulting with my mother to go to the MEP station and sign up to become a U.S. Army reservist. Unbeknownst to me, I ended up signing paperwork to go into active duty service versus a reserve status. And so I was tripping, and it was like, okay, you've done this thing. I go through basic training. It's a life-changing experience. My first duty station was at Fort Lewis, Washington, in Tacoma, Washington. I'm 19 years old, never been away from home. I called my mom. I was like, you know what, mom? You got to get me out of this. Please call Governor Milliken and tell him to give me whatever I need to get home. And she said, no, you made a decision. You're going to follow it through. A year in, my mother called and said, Steph, our home is going into foreclosure. What can you do to help me save the house? I'm 19 years old. I don't know anything about credit. I don't have any credit. And I was a private in the US Army. I had no money. The weight of that fell so hard on me. And my mom was very loving and was like, it's okay, I'm gonna figure it out. Long story short, they ended up foreclosing on my mother's home. But as a Black mother in Muskegon Heights, Michigan, she had the wherewithal and the resilience to say to the bank, listen, you're going to sell the house to someone else. Why not sell it back to me? I know it, I know what it needs. And they sold my mom our family home back with a lower interest rate. And that was our family's home for almost 40 years. I say all of that, and I didn't recognize and realize my commitment to housing until I was in a racial healing circle at St. Luke's, maybe almost 10 years ago. And they said, share something that you've never shared with anyone in this healing circle. And that was the story that I shared. I don't know where it erupted from, but it was then in that healing circle that a participant said, that's why you're passionate about housing. Because to be in a place where you could become homeless is a very vulnerable and scary place to be. And I believe from that time on, I've been committed to creating housing solutions and also connecting with families and individuals who are at a place financially where that could happen to them. And so that's why I am so passionate about housing. And I believe that I was created for this lifetime to advocate and to move in the housing sector in a way that is just, that is loving, and that creates solutions for people who have been unseen for decades and decades to come.
That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Um, you and I have in common the middle daughter and raised by a single mom. We have those things in common. So, Stephanie, can you tell us how big is the housing crisis in Kalamazoo currently, or approximately?
So I'll equate it to how big is the Grand Canyon?
Wow.
The housing crisis in Kalamazoo is so large that sometimes it feels as if you can't solve it, that there is no way out of what we're going through. I want to also say this, what we're experiencing in Kalamazoo, we're not unique. This is something that is happening around the country, right? And the other part to that is this is a man made issue. I equate it to a cancer. And when you think about cancer and how it's invasive and how it can disrupt an individual and a family, and yet you have treatments that can address it. And sometimes it can address it in a way that an individual and family can go into remission and get some solace in that. And then there are often times where you can get to it and eradicate the cancer out of that body. This is one of the issues and crises and illnesses that's man-made that can be cured the moment that we put humanity in the forefront of what is happening in this country. It's a man-made issue, and I've been saying this with my chest and with my knees and 10 toes down. It's a man-made issue, but women are here to solve this crisis. And I say that with all love for men. However, it takes being a nurturing human being to see what's not being shown, to hear what's not being shared. And together, we can solve and heal this illness called homelessness in our community. Kalamazoo is ripe to be a leader in that work. We have the resources, We have the people who are dedicated and committed to the work. What we have is an issue about resources being allocated in a way that is just and equitable.
So with the current administration at the federal level, how are things feeling for you in this mission for housing for all?
That's a good question, Darby. I personally feel um, hopeful, optimistic. There are moments where I doubt our humanity, but I believe in something bigger than myself, bigger than the current people in leadership. And that gives me the courage and resilience to speak light into what seems to be very heavy and dark. Um, I believe that everything that is happening in the United States right now is divine in nature. It's uncomfortable for us. We don't fully understand the plan and don't know the plan. I also believe that, and at the federal level, they don't know the plan either. So I am very encouraged about those of us who really care for human beings and the way of life in the United States of America, that we are shining that light. My faith takes me back to the scripture that says, we are a city that sitteth on a hill that cannot be hid. And so sometimes it is scary. And I choose to lean into the beauty and I turn to wonder. And I learned that through my racial healing practitioner training. I turn to wonder because it's not inherent that human beings are bad. We just need to turn to wonder and give space for a different way of being and living in the world. So ultimately, I'm excited and encouraged about where we are. Do I want to sometimes fight and punch somebody in the throat? Yeah, absolutely. Because make it make sense, knowing that there's a divine plan and process and in play.
Mhm. So I don't know, but we could have people of varying political persuasions on this call. I don't know. And if we do, I'd like to ask you a basic question. It's not really my question, but it's just a question for the evening. All right. Why does housing equity matter?
I love that question, and I've had time to ponder on it. It's something that is innate within me. Um, but it matters because housing is foundational to our humanity. When we as human beings have a safe place to live, we thrive as individuals, we thrive as families, our children thrive, and that leads to a thriving of our communities. In a just society, housing equity is crucial because it ensures that all people, not just certain segments of humanity, but all people will not only have access, but can afford quality, accessible, and supportive housing. It spurs economic opportunity. It provides health and well being, physically and mentally and spiritually. Housing is one of the wealth generating qualities that we have in America. Not the only one, but it's generating for family generational wealth, and it reduces disparities. Um, when you think about what's happening in Kalamazoo County around uh, infant mortality, when you think about the gun violence that we're experiencing, when you think about the health disparities amongst Black and Brown folk, one of the core issues is the lack of housing and affordable and safe housing. So when we want to talk about housing equality and equity, it is foundational to who we are as human beings.
And I couldn't agree more. Mhm. How does housing justice intersect with racial and economic justice? And I know you kind of answered that, but maybe you have more to say.
For me, and I'm just one human being, but I feel like in some instances, I'm always right when it comes to housing and people. Um, you can't separate housing, racial, and economic justice. Black folk as a whole were denied access to VA, FHA, and other mortgage opportunities and products due to redlining. We still suffer today with this practice that has been outlawed in our community. When you think about wealth generating uh, opportunities, housing has been one of the first things. Families have been able to take out loans on their home, refinance to ensure that their children will have an opportunity to go to college and not get student loans. Um, the house for many people have been in the families for generations to come. It impacts what we as citizens of this country and residents, let me correct that. I want to say residents of this country have been able to do to build wealth. When you think about there were laws and practices put in place intentionally at the federal level, which had a trickle down effect to the local level that said, nope, you're Black or of African descent, you do not deserve to own a home in this neighborhood. We're going to place you closer to the paper factory or the railroads where all of these environmental injustices happen in communities of color. You can't separate the three of them. You cannot. I chose to buy a home on the north side of Kalamazoo very intentionally. It was very important for me to say, I believe in my community. I want to live around people who look like me. I want to smell the barbecue on the grill in the summer. I want to hear the loud music and the kids playing in the water sprinkler and people having a good time. Um, and then I moved here and my respiratory system has been affected immensely because of the environmental injustice and our lack of really calling in why this is happening on the north side, east side, and in Parchment of our county. And so when I think about that, that was a personal preference for me. I needed to show that even though you can afford to purchase a home, you don't have to move out of your neighborhood to be effective. I take care of my home. My lawn is taken care of. My neighbors do the same thing. So I really want to speak to the importance of home ownership and also staying in our local neighborhoods that desperately need our taxes within the city of Kalamazoo. Portage doesn't need my money out there, but the city of Kalamazoo does. I live right behind Lincoln Elementary. I live around the corner from Woodward School. So I cannot separate the justice, the racial, and the economic contribution that I'm making to the city of Kalamazoo by being intentional about where I chose to purchase my home. Does that make sense?
Sure does. Appreciate that that great explanation. And would you mind sharing with us kind of the environmental piece that you've been experiencing? What's going on over there?
Yeah, so I live on the north side of Kalamazoo. I live like 3 minutes away from Graphic Packaging, who is a major employer, and they provide, more than livable wages to many people within our county. And there is direct physiological and health harm happening on the north side, which is predominantly people of color, specifically Black folk, and they have not been um, responsive to our needs in a way that brings equity and justice. although they make tons, millions and millions and millions of dollars. So their investment back into our community at the local and neighborhood level has been very minuscule.
Mm.
So I experienced personally, I've had a respiratory issue since 2018 when I moved here, where I have a chronic cough. I am now taking different medications that I had never been on. Um, I am working holistically to come off of those medications because there can be a remedy for that. However, I'm not unique to what's happening on the north side at all.
Well, it's very concerning, and I'm sorry to hear that. Seems that we need more attention to that situation.
Absolutely.
Can we talk for a minute about the Kalamazoo City Commission? Um, this is your fourth year on the commission. And I know, again, you don't like to talk about yourself necessarily, but how has your presence on the board helped to move the needle of awareness and change on the issue of housing?
Thank you for that question. I think, first of all, like I tell people, like being on the city commission is a blessing and a curse. um, because I'm learning so much, and I know that the city staff and leadership have very good hearts and want to do great things within our community. Um, and then you have the people that we serve on behalf of who don't understand the inner workings of what's happening behind the scenes. And so it's been a blessing to learn more about city government and how a city operates, and also learning that not all the time does a city want to stand up and be bold and do what's right by community based on the city's financial needs, right? One of the things that I'm very proud of is it just happened in the fall of 2024. We were going over our city's budget, and they were doing a presentation. What I recognized in that we are at crisis levels with unhoused people within our community and homelessness as a whole in the city and in the county. We had allocated no funding to our unhoused and homeless issue that is happening. And so, being a city commissioner, some of those meetings, like we work full-time jobs, the majority of us, we go into city commission meetings and we're there for almost 6 to 8 hours, depending on what's happening. So it takes me about 3 to 4 hours to decompress after a city commission meeting. In that time, at the end of the year, last year, it hit me that we didn't allocate any funding for 25 to address the housing and the homeless issue that we're dealing with. And so me and all of my stuff, I can't sleep. So why not send the entire city staff, leadership, and commission an email, hoping that they don't wake up in the middle of the night and read it. But we need to do more. We did not allocate anything towards 2025 in addressing the needs of us investing something into our homeless population, be it uh, support for nonprofits doing great work, creating a day shelter, whatever that meant. And so after that, we were able to come back to City Commission and we found $500,000 to put into the budget to address
Nice,
how
nice.
the unhoused population and the work being done for 2025. I'm very proud of that. And it wasn't me. The city commission had to agree on it to allocate that funding into the budget, but we were able to do it because what we're experiencing in Kalamazoo, when you see the people holding signs, when you see the people sleeping on the sidewalk or laying on the sidewalk, when you see the people wrapped around the gospel mission or ministry with community, um, they're here. They're human beings. And for whatever reason, they need our assistance, and we need to be able to provide that. Um, Another thing that I am very proud of is in 2020 in Ottawa County, their commission transitioned to red, and they immediately disbanded their DEI department immediately. When that happened in 2020, I said, you know what? We need to do something to codify diversity, equity, and inclusion within our city government because that could also happen here. And I heard pushback and they said, we would never do that. Mm, I'm not so sure of that. I'm not so sure of it. So, how can we codify it to ensure that we are committed to doing the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And we were able to create an ordinance to address that. And so, and I say I bring that up because that has a trickle down effect into every department of city government. So when we're looking at neighborhood improvements such as sidewalks, how are we infusing how different neighborhoods are receiving the funding they need to improve sidewalks or lead-based paint, or not lead-based paint, but lead piping, and how do we do all of that with including DEI into that work? And so we've been able to do that at the city level. I'm very proud of what we have done in my first 4 years. And I say first four, um, we have much more to do, but we have been doing great things and having hard discussions within the city of Kalamazoo in reference to our residents and the people that we work so hard to ensure that have a better quality of life.
Love it. Love it. And I've had many thoughts myself about DEI and how school districts and so many businesses and so forth can just integrate that into their being. We can't lose sight of it. We can't. So codifying is wonderful. What in the community, what are some of the efforts that you have seen that have made the greatest impact with regard to housing in recent years?
There are two that rise to the occasion for me. In 2015, I had the opportunity to work with a committee that got the first housing millage passed in Kalamazoo County, and I believe in the country. And it was called Vote Yes for Kids. And it was a millage that would have dedicated funds for families who had school-aged children that were experiencing housing insecurity and or homelessness. We were very proud of doing that. We had many lessons that were learned in those first 5 years. And so when it came up for renewal, um, we began having discussions around, okay, what's the next iteration of this? What do we do? And I interjected and said, like, we had so many learnings because it was so narrow in scope. But during these 5 years, we've learned that there were people who were on social security who were not able to access that funding. What about the families that had children that was zero to kindergarten, that were experiencing housing insecurity and homelessness? There were so many populations that were excluded from that first millage that we came up with the idea to start advocating for homes for all. Homes for All was an extension of the Vote Yes for Kids. I don't believe if we didn't have Vote Yes for Kids, we would have been able to move into Homes for All. We were able to get that millage passed with the support of the entire Kalamazoo community, homeowners in the community. Um, there was back and forth around, I wanted us to be bold. I wanted us to go for 1 mil and let's go. There were people in the room who said, no, now it's not the time because we were going right into what we now know a pandemic. What I said in those meetings was, why is it that people of color and people that are low income or have no income are always put on the back burner? Now is the time for us to be bold. Now is the time for us to be creative, and let's do it and let's get it out there and let the people decide what we should do. And thankfully, Kalamazoo County said yes. Yes. And it was extended. So we now have 8 years of dedicated funding to address affordable housing and housing within the Kalamazoo County. So those are two things that we have done well. And with us, I believe, I want to say, after our 2015 Vote Yes for Kids campaign, Ann Arbor then went on and did a housing millage as well, where they were able, I believe theirs is 20 years. So as we continue to do this work and we continue to provide housing solutions and support for families that desperately need it, um, I'm hoping that we will be able to extend and build on this Homes for All millage and get it in perpetuity. It is my dream for Kalamazoo County.
Beautiful. Love it. Um, there may be people on the call tonight who have never dealt with the issue of homelessness or being unhoused or known anyone personally who is unhoused. How do you get their attention?
Yeah, that that's a big question. There are people who really believe that we have residents within our community are homeless because they choose to be. And I don't know of any human being who wants to sleep outside on a cold sidewalk or in a park or on a bench in a Michigan winter. I think there needs to be a lot of education around why we have homelessness in Kalamazoo County and around the country. A lot of it is because household incomes have not kept up with inflation and rising housing costs. It is not just a person that is suffering with substance use disorder. It is not just a person who has mental health issues. There are families who literally their car broke down and they couldn't get to work, and now they're no longer in housing. And so I think there needs to be awareness building on who is truly homeless within our Kalamazoo County. And when you look at it, many people they lean towards the person or the individuals that are walking around downtown, the ones that are holding a sign. But truly in Kalamazoo County, the population that is severely affected by being unhoused and homeless are Black and Brown mothers and children. Black folk in Kalamazoo County make up about 12% of our population. And when you think about families being affected by what's happening within our community, you will learn that it is Black women and children that are disproportionately affected by that. And that's around 60 to 70% of our homeless population. We don't talk about that a lot because all we see is the visual. And you can go to the Kalamazoo County Continuum of Care website and pull down those demographics. It's real. And so when we think about race and class and homelessness, there's a direct correlation within our county. And so I believe through education and this notion that people are not homeless because they want to be. Our incomes and the housing costs have not been parallel. And that's one of the biggest issues that we have in Kalamazoo County, and I would say around the state and in our country.
Great explanation. So, what can we do to ensure safe, affordable homes for all?
That again is a big question. With the rising cost of construction and rent, the housing crisis will be with us for a long time. What we can do as a community is reach out to our local, our state, and our federal representatives to lift up the need to create opportunities for us to build creative housing solutions that are not solely reliant on federal and state dollars. Kalamazoo is a very resource-rich community. How can we leverage those millage dollars? And I will say this, that our housing director at the county, Mary Balkema, has been very influential in some of those conversations to get money and use that as a leverage piece to get dollars, millions of dollars into our community to provide affordable housing. The one pushback that I have right now is there's this emphasis on the missing middle, on the working middle class. There is a need there. However, individuals within our community that are 50% and below do not even have the ability to access affordable housing. And so together we need to have that conversation and not leave that population out, but also include them when we're talking about housing and when we're talking about the median income and those levels of housing that we want to begin to create. With the interest rates where they are right now, and again, I'll preface this by saying this is me as an individual. Um, right now, certain families and households, given the interest rate, cannot even afford to get a mortgage right now. So, how do we advocate at the local, state, and federal level to put in legislation where we can have rent control? Like right now, you have apartments that are a one bedroom is renting for almost $1,800 a month. I can't even afford that. So, if you're working and you're making $15 an hour and you're a mother of three children, that that alleviates you from even being able to access. We need education around um, fair housing law within our community. So, inviting our fair housing organization to come in and provide community wide education around fair housing. One thing that I'm also proud about in the city of Kalamazoo is in 2020, our city voted unanimously to approve a housing equity ordinance that was then authored by our former mayor, Patrice Griffin, to get even more protection done. Where we need advocacy at the local level, and what we can do is that is only exclusive within the city of Kalamazoo. How do we get that into every municipality within the county? Some of the things that we have heard in discussion is they don't have the capacity, nor do they have the finances to create that department to oversee that. How can we get creative at the county level by leveraging funds and getting state dollars to come in to help municipalities address housing equity within the county? And that's
Yes.
just to name a few. I think also coming to speak on behalf of residents, although many people have not experienced it and don't know firsthand or secondhand, you see it all around us in Kalamazoo. So let's not choose to turn a blind eye to what's happening, but let's look at it, acknowledge that it's happening, and get involved with creative solutions to start building consensus around us ending homelessness because it can be eradicated, you guys. It really can.
So I do have a segue question for you before we go into Q&A. But before that, is there anything else that you would like to share with the group, Stephanie?
I can share so much when it comes to housing. Um, One thing I would like to share is that um, the County of Kalamazoo, along with Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition, we received an award of a little bit under 19 million to do a healthy holistic homes project. This would give 300 households the ability to get upgrades to their home to make them more energy efficient. And it also really talks and speaks to the environmental justice and the East Side, North Side, Edison, and West Douglas. It's a beautiful program. I am honored to be able to work with them full time now as a program director and building that program out. Um, and with the new administration, there have been several executive orders that have been drafted and also signed. We need all hands on deck right now to put pressure on the federal government to one, release the funds that Congress has already passed and signed, because that project is going to ensure that homeowners and children and our elderly population will not have to leave their home. Like, we won't continue to exacerbate the homelessness that we're having because we have these funds that have already been allocated and signed into law. The other piece is that with this grant, it builds workforce development. So there's a training component that will give specific individuals living in those core neighborhoods that have been identified the ability to get trained at HVAC, renovations, all these things, which add to our economic development and to our economic structure in Kalamazoo County. We need all hands on deck. This is an important body of work, and it could change lives for generations to come. And we need to lift our voices at the local level and at the state level and at the federal level and put pressure and not just sit idly by. I feel like what I feel personally is like there are so many things happening and we're just in a state of shock. And so we haven't been able to move. But now it's the time to act and to stand up for what is right. I will say, like in attendance of Isaac and Dr. Charlay Davis, we are committed to building the beloved community. And this is just one portion of building that community and also giving value to people who have been excluded from accessing funding and programs that will enhance their lives and their quality of lives. So, yeah, I'll end right there.
Oh, and thanks for putting a plug in for that. I know we have at least two, probably more people on this call who are very actively involved with KCCC. So CCC, three C's.
Yep.
Yeah. So Stephanie, this has been amazing, and we're going to segue to Q&A. And the segue is there a question you would like to ask people on the call tonight? And please know, everybody, Stephanie did not have any of these questions ahead of time. So it's all, she's winging all of it and doing a magnificent job.
So while she's thinking of that, I'm going to put us into gallery view and invite people to turn on their cameras so Stephanie can see who's here in the room tonight and who she's speaking to. There we go.
Great. Thank you, Miriam. So again, is there a question you would like to ask people on the call tonight, Stephanie? And if not, we'll just move to Q&A, but I'd like to start with that anyway.
One of the top questions that I would want to ask to the group tonight is, how committed are you all to advancing humanity moving forward? Because if we don't see individuals in a way that brings out their humanness, despite their circumstances of what they look like or what they're going through, we will never be able to solve what we're going through in the housing sector. So, how many are committed to that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a great question. It's a great question for people to reflect on for themselves.
We have a lot of raised hands and hearts as people are resonating with that question. So I think there's some commitment here in the room.
Yes. Beautiful.
Are there any questions for Stephanie? Go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you, or Darby can. Go ahead, Sherry. You're muted, Sherry, sorry.
Sorry, my dog was moving my hand, so I couldn't unmute myself. Um, so I'm not familiar with the nuts and bolts of what a millage does. How does that translate into housing programs, and what's been able to be done because of that millage?
Thank you, Sherry, for that question. So what the millage does is, in the first year, we received between, I believe, I don't know the numbers because it's been a minute and I'm getting older, but between $6 and $8 million per year allocated to provide funding for affordable housing projects and also creative solutions, along with support services for organizations doing great work around housing within Kalamazoo. Also being able to leverage that funding from the millage uh, to access money at the state and federal level as well. I see Mary is on the call right now and she can talk to it. She's our housing director. I didn't know you were here, Mary, so oops, I brought you up. But it's all
So
good. I
thanks
had your
for
back.
that. So the millage is 0.75 mils for 8 years. This year it'll generate $9 million. And we're a funder into multifamily units, single family, creative projects, owner occupied rehab, and also supportive services. So one of the questions was, how many units have you done so far? So far, we've done 1,498 units. We 30% and below of AMI, 123 units. And currently we have 805 units under construction. So we have leveraged up millions of dollars at the state and federal level. And we are the only county that is doing housing to scale. The other county that passed a housing millage, Commissioner Hoffman said it was Ottawa County. It was really Ingham County. They passed 0.5 mils and they could only get it passed for 3 years. So ours is for 8 years. They modeled theirs largely after ours, but theirs is significantly, obviously a lower amount. It generates, I think, about $5 million a year, and ours generates 9.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mary Belkema, for that supportive information, for that question. Great question.
So I saw Nikki had her hand up, and then we have a question in the chat from Gwendolyn.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. Can I ask both of them? I will ask.
Depends.
One is, what's happening, if anything, with the tiny home towns that we were at one point talking about building, and I believe you still have some in storage. And then with the federal fund freezing, is that affecting our housing millage at all? Because if they're not giving us money, how are we being, and can we still leverage it up? Are we fighting the freezings? Is the city and county being affected by the freezings? I know KCCC is, and Stephanie mentioned that, but what's happening with the rest of the world?
So do you want me to answer that or
So
not?
I'll start, Mary, and then you can jump
Sure.
in. And so what's happening, and Nikki, I believe you're speaking to the HRI pod project, that there were 50 pods that were purchased to provide transitional housing as housing was being built. Last year, HRI had to halt that work because there was a lot of community discourse and the funding. I think it was something that people really didn't understand. Could we have done it differently? I believe we could have. It was a good project that will provide transitional housing for individuals that were completely unhoused, and sleeping on the streets. I do believe there can be an opportunity for us to revisit that and do it in a more creative and collaborative way. The Tiny Houses Project, and that's with Gwendolyn Hooker and the Tiny Houses of Hope. Those 3 houses have been built. Gwendolyn is on the call too, so I'll just ask her to interject. and give you all an update. I had an opportunity to tour one of the homes, and they are fabulous. Um, and I know she wants to scale up. So, Gwen, are you willing to speak if you can hear me?
She put in the chat that the tiny house project is going great. Oh,
Well,
there she is. Go ahead, Gwen.
hello everyone. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Absolutely. Tiny House Project, it's doing remarkably well. We have people in the homes. We are scaling them up to build more houses across the street, as well as our commercial wraparound building, which will provide on-site services and supports to not only the people that live there, but the community at large. And so, yeah, they're I've supported that work, and I'm looking forward to ways that we can definitely support Kalamazoo climate crisis and all of the work that it's going to take to get those funding dollars to where they need to go into the hands of community.
Thank
I
you.
think, Nikki, your next question was about our funding and if federal funding is affecting it. So obviously we are a HUD entitlement community. We get about $2 million of HUD money coming in. So I think it could affect our HUD allocation, our CDBG, and our home dollars. The city of Kalamazoo has seen a decrease in that. As far as the millage dollars go, because it's a local millage, those will still come in. And we're seeing that some of our projects are getting creative and not taking in MSHDA debt. So our community foundation has stepped in. They're giving low interest loans to make these projects work. And so I think in times of uncertainty, we get really, really creative. And I'm seeing that our developers are doing that.
Okay, thank you.
And then
I also wanted to lift up that in Ann Arbor in Washtenaw County, they renewed a 2024 millage that will provide homelessness funding long term. So when we talk about, when I mentioned Ann Arbor and those things, there was a renewal of, and that happened in 24, that will address homelessness through programs like emergency housing and rapid rehousing as well.
Hey, Stephanie, you talked about that your hope was that a millage could be passed in perpetuity. That is no longer legal. So, Kalamazoo Valley Community College has a millage in perpetuity. The county of Kalamazoo does, but you can no longer do that. So you have to have it a term. So, 3 years, 8 years, 20 years. So millages in perpetuity are great, but they're no longer legal.
Well, then let's go for 20. How about that?
20 is good. I love 20.
Yeah, let's go for 20 and we don't have to address it for 20 years. And
Right.
hopefully by that time, we have solved our homeless and our unhoused issue that we're having in Kalamazoo County, because it is a solvable issue.
So we had a question in the chat. It's from Gwendolyn, but I'll read it anyway. Can you talk about your thoughts around the Housing First model and the Hoteling Intervention Project and the creative ways to provide sheltering options for unhoused people?
Yeah, so when we think about the Housing First model, like it's varying levels to that. And if you want to do a real Housing First model, it is a entire community collaborative process. It is not one organization doing Housing First. It takes a commitment from the entire community. And I think that's where some of the struggles have been in Kalamazoo County, where you have people who want to take on tenets of Housing First, but it's an entire way of building out and making sure that people have access, one, to housing. Let's get them in housing, and then let's wrap around and give them the support services that they need. Not everybody agrees with that model. And to be honest, I have also questioned the viability of that. And I was introduced to something that Toby shared with us around what Finland did with their Housing First model. And they took all of their information from us in the United States and they did it. And so I think it comes back to us being committed and thinking outside of the box. And it takes us to stop judging human beings on where they are and how they got there. That's one thing when I think about Housing First. It's a community effort, and we have to have all hands on deck throughout the entire county. in every municipality to get it done and be willing to share information and have a coordinated effort to address it. That is something within the housing sector that we've experienced where the level of collaboration, we haven't figured that out just yet. I do believe that there's a way that we can, because if we don't, we'll only be exacerbated by what's happening within Kalamazoo County as it pertains to our unhoused population and the homelessness that we're dealing with. What was the second part of the question?
The hoteling intervention project.
That is tricky. And I know that me personally, I push the city manager in Kalamazoo to start reconvening those meetings that were happening a few years ago prior to the pandemic with the county, with Portage, with other municipalities to have a conversation, because what it feels like within the city is that the homeless issue that we're experiencing is a city issue when it really is a county-wide issue. And not only that, it is a Southwest Michigan region issue because Kalamazoo, we hold the most resources within our region to address some of those things. And so, Mary, I'll ask you to kick in and say a little bit about that from the county's perspective.
Sure. So we just purchased a hotel, the Country Inn and Suites on East Kilgore Road for $5.65 million. We got $1.2 million from ARPA from the city of Kalamazoo. The city of Portage contributed $500,000, and then AVB was going to build a hotel right near it. They started fussing to the Portage city leadership, and the city of Portage pulled back their $500,000. So sometimes developers can sway public opinion, which is very unfortunate in this hotel situation. So we are moving forward with our hotel. It will serve 80 homeless families. We have a desperate need in this community. We have 1,700 homeless children. I am fundraising right now, especially since the city of Portage pulled back their $500,000. The city of Portage has one of the largest increases in homeless children from the past year. They say it's due to the tornado. I'm not sure exactly what it's due to, but the problem exists. And so it's also very expensive to house homeless families when you feed them, when you have supportive services. And I have yet to have a local municipality raise their hand and say they'll help. And so it is a serious issue. It's an issue where we need all hands on deck. And I'm also trying to figure out if you send someone into this area because you have no infrastructure built, like Van Buren County, like Cass County, like the counties around us, we do not have a sign that we're open to homelessness and closed to business. That is not what we're going to do. We're taking these folks that are in our schools right now through the coordinated entry process. But how, if you send somebody and they end up here, how do we build those communities back? Because we know that homelessness costs between $30,000 and $50,000 a year. To permanently house someone, it is significantly less. And so I think it's going to take a lot of bright minds to figure that piece out. But also, you cannot leave one jurisdiction with a very large bill every single year and think that a small donation is going to solve the problem. That does not work. We need a fund, and that's what other communities do too, where every municipality puts in money every single year in perpetuity. But that was a great question. Thanks for that. As you can tell, I have a little bit of passion surrounding it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. I do have another question in the chat. This is from Esther. I am wondering what the county city is doing to improve the quality of life for those who are currently sleeping outside, as far as restrooms and warming shelters. Is there more that can be done? What can we be doing better?
Thank you for that question. There's absolutely more that can be done. Absolutely. And money is a finite thing. And one, like Mary alluded to, like one municipality can't take the full load of an entire county. And so the city of Kalamazoo, we have been talking about how do we improve the quality of life downtown? How do we address these things in reference to restrooms and portaloos and all these different things? Y'all, it's so convoluted, and you have so many people in the city who have varying needs, wants, and desires. And so, from a city commissioner's perspective, yes, first, I'm there to serve the people. And we know that we need more access downtown. But we also need the business infrastructure to understand and work alongside of us and say, so what we've been dealing with, and I'm gonna just be very transparent, is we were getting ready to put another portable restroom downtown. And then we had a developer say that's too close to our development, so we don't want it here. And then it halted the things. And so then you have community come in and say, you said you were going to do this, you haven't done it, do your job. And so you have all these competing interests, right? When at the end of the day, as a city government, we need to say, one, this is a public health need, and we need to put it where it needs to be. And so we can't always cater to large developers who are bringing housing to our community, but also are not willing to provide some affordable housing within that development. So as a city commissioner, I'm pushing back saying, if you're not willing to work alongside of us, well, is this partnership really do we really need to continue partner in this way? And so when you think about affordable housing, there's this notion that, oh, creating affordable housing, it costs so much more. It really, like, the square footage does not change. What changes is the bottom line for the developer. Real talk. And we need to have that discussion as well. If you're committed to providing housing, this is what the city of Kalamazoo needs. We need more units of affordable housing that are addressing individuals and families at 50% and below. And sometimes Mary and I, we have had differing opinions on that. And yet that's the reality of what we need. We need market rate housing, but we definitely need more affordable housing that goes deeper within our community and throughout the county. That's real.
And to your point, Stephanie, 530 South Rose is a senior development. It has 64 units. All the affordable units are leased up. All the market rate ones are not. We absolutely know where the demand is. And when you want to serve those lower AMIs, you just have a deeper subsidy. And the city is not in the business to enrich a private developer on market rate units. The city, in exchange for affordable housing, which is 120% and below, they will give certain incentives or dollars into the project, or TIF, or a pilot. So they have a lot of tools and they have a lot of power, and they can get to the affordability if they fund it. So it's really a matter of the numbers.
Carol, did you have your hand up? Yep, go ahead.
Yes, I did. I jumped in. I am part of Westminster Presbyterian Church. We have one of the very few warming centers, and we've been up and running for 2 years. We will be extending into next year. We run like November through March, and it's 2 days a week. And we do pick up. We have a Metro van that's been given to us, free of cost and free of gasoline too. And so that's been very helpful. And our numbers are kind of like 15 every day we're open. And we see the homeless. We provide showers, we have a meal, and we have a quiet place, and people sleep on the floor. I mean, it's an extension really of ministry with community. And it's sad, but we see what we're seeing and understand what's going on. My suggestion is that perhaps there should be a housing newsletter, a status report. Where's the millage? How much millage money are we getting, and where's it going, and what's the plan for future? So people are informed, and when they're informed, they understand the need and what is going on. So it's really spreading the word.
So Carol, we have that. It's at kalamazoo.county.gov/housing. So we have newsletters, we put out reports, we pay Second Wave Media $30,000 a year to do stories on all of our projects.
Right, I see
So we
those.
have a lot of content. Our new annual report should be out at the end of April. So we really try to get the story out. But if anyone on this call wants any more information, I have every single year, every single project, where the AMI is in our investment. And I'm happy to share anything that I have. And maybe Miriam could email it to me. I'll put my email in the chat. And then if anyone wants the information, I am 100% happy to share it with you.
Absolutely. I'll actually send a recording of this evening to everybody who registered for the call. So if you send me any information that you want me to disperse out to everybody else, I can do that happily. And
Thank you so
I will
much.
put my email in the chat.
I also want to do a selfish plug for Housing Matters. Housing Matters is a monthly forum where people can come and learn about what's happening within the city and county of Kalamazoo. Um, and we talk about these very issues concerning housing and what's happening within our community. So that is another good resource that people can tap into.
Nikki, did you have another question?
Yeah, I feel like we're talking about two different things at times and conflating them. The housing millage, my understanding was for low-income housing to be part of the housing. There had to be below market apartments. But homeless can't afford low-income housing. So they're not going into they're not really being covered by the housing millage, is my understanding. Mary answered part of the question with the hotel, but it costs $30,000 to $50,000 a year to support somebody in housing. How are we handling more of the housing for the homeless versus the low income?
So we passed an affordable housing millage. We did not pass a homeless millage, first of all, Nikki. Second of all, we have over $10 million that goes into this community to address homelessness through the mission, has almost a $5 million budget. Ministry of Community has a $2.7 million budget. We get $2 million through the continuum of care. We have the city and the county spending money.
Doesn't take any gay people. They have problems with other groups also.
I'm just saying the dollars that go into homelessness. And so the millage does not specifically go into homelessness or homeless services. We are about building units because we have we're 7,750 units short of all housing types in this community. And we're trying to make a dent in that number.
Right. No, I understand that we need both, but I just feel like that by talking about low income housing for the homeless, I'm missing something because homeless cannot go into low income housing. They have to be going into no income housing where there's no cost to them. And I don't.
Well, that doesn't really exist in America, zero cost housing. And so, housing is super expensive, and we're putting homeless families into our mobile home project in Sugarloaf, and they can afford $800 a month, and we're charging them 30% of their income. And most people do make some income, even if it's Social Security or Social Security disability. And so we're working with folks to be stable and to increase their earnings over time and their education levels. So I would disagree that we need free housing in America. I just don't know anywhere where that exists.
I'm not saying we need free housing, but I'm saying the homeless is a different situation. A lot of the homeless cannot afford housing, and that's where I'm missing the connection here.
Well, I think it's housing for all is like we're talking about both sides of the equation because low income people need housing. We have a housing shortage in the community, and we have an unhoused community that we have to address. It's not a and or, it's a both and.
No, I realize that, but I'm not hearing in this discussion. Stephanie, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying, Nikki. And we do need to invest more into our unhoused population and what that looks like, right? Mary and I met for breakfast a few years back, and I'll never forget when you told me, you said, we have disinvested in our core neighborhoods for decades. Now it's time for us to overinvest. And when I think about our housing continuum, it starts at unhoused, transitional, supportive, affordable, home ownership opportunities, right? So there's an entire continuum that we need to address. I think the two that we have missed the mark on are providing funding, which was so important for me to lift that up at the city level about allocating a certain amount of money just to get us started at the city level for the 2025 budget. What I would like to see is that we make that a general budget line item every year in perpetuity. That's my favorite word for tonight. Um, uh, because the need is so great, right? So there is a need and we can do more. What we need is advocacy around creative solutions to have an impact in that housing continuum. There are many people who always say, not in my backyard. Oh, we don't want it here. We don't want it there. Well, if people on the north side, east side, and Ensign, they don't want it over there. People in Winchell, we don't want it here. People in Oakwood, we don't want it here. My sister friend Toby said, "What about Wimby? Welcome in my backyard." What if we took that approach to it? Right? And so, Nikki, I hear you when you say like but there's this entire continuum that we need to begin starting at the basics. Like, there were a couple of articles that came out last summer that I called Mary and I was like, was this a good article to you? And she was like, well, what do you mean? And you know what I mean? We have to start at the basics. And because it took us decades to get here. And it also took when the federal government began to um, discontinue supporting affordable housing solutions within the country. Like we've been doing that for over 40 years now. So how do we advocate at the federal level to say we need your investment at the state and local level? And how can we do it more creatively? Like we can lift our voices from the local levels um, to the state level and then put pressure because what we're experiencing in Kalamazoo is happening throughout the country. But where is the outcry for real? We can do what we can do locally, and we did that by passing 2 millages. And yet it's still not enough. We're at 9 million now, Mary said. When you think about the housing costs, what it takes to construct housing, like it's crazy. Like who can afford really to build a house right now? And who can really afford a mortgage? And so how do we advocate and say we need some price controls within this country because capitalism is real and people are benefiting on behalf of people who I don't like using the word POOR, but that will fall into that category because when we use the word poor, it kind of infers that somebody is deficient in who they are as a human being. And really what it is an economic tool and they don't have the income that is necessary to get them out of that. So it's a broader discussion and it's a more involved discussion that we need to be having as a community and how do we come together with a common goal to address the things that need to be addressed locally and then always have that impact at the state level. I believe that Kalamazoo County, we have done great things. At the state level, we now we have legislation that talks about source of income. And so I believe a lot of that stuff happened because of what we were able to do with the housing equity ordinance in Kalamazoo. So there's a light shining on Kalamazoo. We've always been the first in the state to do many things. And with the housing crisis that we're in, this is no different. We need to be the first to set the model and to set the standard.
Stephanie, I would lift up though the cost of housing construction. Sorry for interrupting, but I was on a ribbon cutting today on North Rose, down from your house. The house cost $312,000 to build. It sold for $176,500, and it was 864 square feet. So you know what? A single dad went in there with his kids, affordable housing, no garage, no lighting, no fence. So you know what? It is a problem, and the cost of construction is unbelievable. And a private developer is not going to lose $136,000 on a house and walk away happy. So government has to be in the space to make it work.
Hold on a second, Dobie. I had a follow-up question for Stephanie. So what I hear is that there needs to be a sort of a countywide, cross municipalities, almost regional approach to really getting to the root of the problem, because it's not just a Kalamazoo thing. And as you work to collaborate with other municipalities, is there like a philosophical stumbling block, or is it just a money thing? In your opinion, what's the stumbling block?
In my opinion, Miriam, certain municipalities, they don't want to acknowledge that they have a housing crisis within their city or within their township. Like it's not there because of where they are within the county lines. Um, and yeah, so I'll because I know Mary probably has something to say, but there's this thought that, oh, we don't have a problem within our community when that is a blatant story. It's not, it's an untruth. It homelessness permeates every district and municipality within Kalamazoo County. It does, whether you want to believe that or not. So,
I think part of it's fear. Some people say we don't want those people living next to us. Some people have a real evil heart, and their mouth says what's in their heart, and it is not good. And just to give you a little example, the housing value in Texas Township, where they have 12,000 people, the housing value is greater than the city of Kalamazoo, where we have 77,000 people. So when we have fast growing, very wealthy districts, they don't see the need for affordable housing because market rate housing, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 houses sell all day long. And we went to Texas Township with an affordable housing project, and the answer was no, period. Charleston, we don't want affordable housing out here. So when people tell me that, I don't have code enforcement, planning, I don't have police power, I have funding power. And so when they say no, I have to go away. And not everybody wants affordable housing. And there's a lot of fear that we're going to dump a homeless encampment right in the middle of their jurisdiction. And that is not at all what we're talking about. We've educated, we've done a ton of work with every municipality, and some of them are beginning to come around, and maybe they want owner occupied rehab. They have an older housing stock. But when the answer is no, you just have to leave, right? With a sad face and a stomach ache.
or you double down and stand 10 toes down. Toby, I see your hand up.
Yeah.
I love this conversation. Thank you so much, UCC. Sister Steph and Mary too, and Gwendolyn, you're making me think that advocating for more low-income housing tax credits might be a part of the answer. When the federal government stopped paying for public housing, one of their answers instead was the low-income housing tax credits. And they're great for the projects that get them, but they're terribly competitive. And I'm wondering, because of the way it works, that the tax credits benefit whoever, Mary can explain that better than I can, that maybe that's a way that if we advocated at the federal level for increased low-income housing tax credits. Do you know anything about that? Can you answer that question?
Yeah, the window's open right now to apply. It's very expensive to apply. It's a very long, complicated process. And you have to hit a certain walkability score, which is a very tricky algorithm. And the only places that really hit that walkability score is the city of Kalamazoo. Well, the city of Kalamazoo is almost fully built out and landlocked. And so there's not a whole lot of spots for a really good low income housing tax credit project to go. And we have two that are in the works, the Cal Recovery, which is for substance use disorder folks, that is starting in the spring, and also the Mount Zion Highlander project. So we have two that have been in the works for quite a while that are finally starting. So I have seen tax credit projects come. 530 South Rose just got to the finish line. But, you know, these units, 64 units cost $19 million. The expense of these places is just unbelievable. And without every single subsidy in these layered financing deals, they do not work. And so I don't even know. I mean, the Lift Foundation had tax credit project that David put in off of Stockbridge, but it doesn't score. So if you don't really have a perfect project, we give advance funding to make them score better, but sometimes even then they don't score. So I think, Toby, if people had a good project, it would score, but it's super difficult.
My question was about changing the way low-income housing tax credit work at NISTA or at the federal level. But we don't have to get into that too much now. We'll talk later.
Okay.
I believe in advocacy, and I love the 5calls.org website that helps us make calls to our senators and our Congress member, or and with information about all the issues that are bothering us right now. So I'm into advocacy.
Beautiful.
I would like
Thank
to
you
add
so
to
much.
this, low-income housing tax credit projects are a good thing, but they're lengthy in time. And if we can't, there is a way that we can create a housing solution that is locally based and funded through philanthropic dollars with a housing millage dollars, where we're taking fourplexes, eightplexes, putting them throughout the county with support services and maybe leveraging to get some more money in from the state level. Like, we don't have to solely be reliant on low income housing tax credits. We need to come together as a community to create another way of building affordable housing, uh, without having such a heavy reliance on the federal government and state government. There is a way to do it. And so what I would like to add and say, because I know our time is winding up, we have programs that are helping local builders and contractors get licensed and to become more proficient, getting on the job training, and also working alongside seasoned contractors and developers to get the experience. And we need to tap into that in a way that is holistic, that can also bring in economic development dollars for that contractor within our local community, and build a product that won't take 5 to 7 years, but we can get done in maybe 12 to 18 months. So we need to think broader about our housing ecosystem and be supportive of those young and up and coming developers and contractors who are dedicated to doing work in Kalamazoo County. So thank you all for having me this evening. This has been like, y'all got my juices flowing, and I'm like, I'm gonna text Mary and be like, we need to have breakfast again so we can
You're not going to be
knuckle
able to
up and
sleep for
figure it
3 more
out.
hours tonight.
It's
So
been a fantastic conversation, and I want to thank everyone for being on this call tonight. We have Charlene Davis here on the call, also head of Isaac. I wish we could have heard from everyone tonight, but appreciate that we could hear from many. And collectively, Stephanie, I'd like to thank you. We'd all like to thank you for being here tonight and for informing us this heartfelt information about, you know, the state of affairs with regard to the unhoused. I learned so much tonight. I'm excited about the collaboration with KCCC. I mean, so much wonderful work happening. So, thank you so much for all that you do serving the unhoused and the underserved, and we're just very grateful. And with that, Miriam has a few announcements.
Yeah,
The
KCCC is a great segue because we are going to have Jenny Dozema with us next month. She is the executive director of the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition, and one of the things that we have asked her to talk about is the program that Stephanie's involved in. So I have a little slide here. Let me see if I can find it that has the information about that. That's coming. That's our April Thoughtful Thursday. There you go. It's 7 p.m. on April 24th. And I will put a link to register to it in the follow-up email to this. We have some other stuff going on at UUCC that people are always welcome to join. And just thank you so much for being here and taking time to join us for Thoughtful Thursday.